Welcome to the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. If you're looking to get more out of your Shenandoah Valley experience, then this is the podcast for you. You'll meet interesting people, the comedians that perform here, and find out more about what you can do and see. Whether you live here or plan to visit, listen to explore what helps make up our unique slice of heaven. Now here's your host, Dawn Davis Womack.
Hello, Laughers. I am thrilled to introduce you to Connie Peterson. At JMU, she teaches athletic training and conducts research on concussion in sport and injury rehabilitation with use of wearable devices. When she's not enriching the minds of college students, she has trained and competed in 8 age group World Triathlon Championships. She is also a very proud aunt, and rightly so. Her niece, Annie Drews, plays for the U.S. women's volleyball team, and they just took home the gold this year in the Olympics with a victory over Brazil. Welcome to the show, Connie. It's great to have you on today.
Hi, Dawn. Thanks for having me.
Oh, this is so fun. I can't wait to introduce you to our Laughers because you're just such an interesting person and so dynamic. And I am so fascinated with what you've done with your World Triathlon Championships because I've done a few and I'm not all that great. And I couldn't compete ever at any kind of age group level anywhere in the world like that. So I thought it would be really cool if we started with, how did you become an age group world-class triathlete?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I think it's impressive that you've done some triathlons because I think it's a really good, there are a lot of opportunities out there for people to do triathlons that have never really thought about doing one. So my background was that I grew up as a swimmer and a tennis player through high school. And as I was finishing high school, the diving coach at my high school recognized that I would need a competitive outlet as an adult. If you know me, I'm a competitive person.
Yes.
I need something to compete with. And so he just recognized that, and triathlon was a really new sport at the time. This was in the 1980s. And so he basically said he was teaching a intro to triathlon class at the local YMCA and invited me to join the class. Without having to pay to take the class, without having to pay to do the training. A lot of the adults that were doing it were parents of my friends, but he knew that I had a swimming background. I rode my bike to swim practices a lot. He saw that. He knew that I ran for conditioning for tennis. We did some dry land running for swimming. And so he just suggested that I do this triathlon. And so I thought, oh, what the heck? Why not? So before my freshman year in college, I actually did my first triathlon. And I had a blast. I rode my good old varsity Schwinn varsity 10 speed that I'd gotten as a third grader or something, probably, looking at that bike today compared to what I ride, not at all the same. And so I just kind of, I ended up going to IU as an undergrad, which was a really big cycling school. And so I kind of fell in love with the cycling then while I was there and did a lot of intramural sports, and continued to play some tennis, just kind of had fun, stayed physically active and went into athletic training. And so, I was looking for ways to stay competitive and have that competitive outlet. And I kind of bought some nicer bikes. I learned a lot more about cycling, got into the cycling part of it, started talking to people about running. And then through my profession within athletic training, where we do a lot about injury prevention, injury management is a big part of my role. That kind of led into me kind of having this own personal sport experience and learning a lot from my own injuries and then trying to maintain that. And then as I transitioned into my adult life, again, having that competitive outlet was important, but it also became a really big part of my social life. And so I would meet friends and go for a bike ride, or I'd meet friends by, joining a bike group or joining a run or going to like a local 5K, running in the 5K and talking with people and getting to know people that way. And so I kind of just used it as a social outlet as well, and kind of a social outlet that doesn't involve food. Most of us, when we think about getting together with friends, we eat probably more than we should. We drink more than we probably should.
I do both of those.
I'm guilty too, and I do that with my friends as well. It's not uncommon to do a bike ride and go get something to eat, but at least I burn the calories first. So I feel a little bit better about, what I'm eating. And so I just kind of, I would say a friend of mine said kind of played at being a triathlete until I started my PhD in 1998. And then same thing, I was using my triathlon to meet people in a new town, in a new city down in Athens, Georgia, and ran into a group of guys that just became like my best friends, took me under their wing and really taught me how to train. And the sport itself was really going through this big transition. There was very little that we knew about best training practices. How do you mix the three together? I kind of lived on my swimming background, tried to run. I had enough athletic talent that I could run, and had learned enough about cycling when I was at IU that I got I was decent, but I didn't really excel. And I would say if people ask me what was your best, by far swimming was my best. And once I started hanging out with these guys, and they were really gotten me into a more structured training program, I really started to get to the point where I was winning local races. I was doing well. I hadn't really competed in too many national championship races because I was a doctoral student. I had no money to travel at that point.
Yeah.
I had to stay local and do stuff, but the USA Triathlon kind of formed, and they started having like national rankings, and I started to appear in some of those national ranking things. And so really it wasn't until 2002. Actually, I hadn't really competed in a world championship yet or an international event, but a friend of mine from Georgia who was a paratriathlete, a Paralympic level, paratype, an athlete with a disability competing in triathlons, was going to compete down in Cancun. And I had an opportunity to go down and race with her as an Athena. So an Athena category is at the time was females that weighed over 150 pounds could participate in this category of Athena. And I had qualified and actually won an Athena World Championship race.
Nice.
In Chicago, like in 2001. And so the qualification for that is 150 pounds. And at 5'10", 150 pounds meant that I was actually pretty skinny.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't hard to meet that 150 pound criteria. And so I, went and she was going down to race in Cancun and said, "Hey, why don't you come with me?" And I was like, "Oh, that sounds fun. Let's go to Cancun and do a triathlon." And so I kind of compared my time as an Athena in that event with the people that had competed in my age group in the world championship type stuff. And, I was like, "Hey, I'm darn competitive here." And so then I started entering the national championship races that are necessary in order to qualify for Team USA, represent the USA in your age group at these world championship events. And so it's been another one of those things where that participation in triathlon has allowed me the opportunity to do some international travel that I wouldn't have done otherwise, and have a support group and a network of friends that are kind of nationally. I've got, and with the explosion of social media, I stay in touch with friends out on the West Coast that I've met through traveling for triathlon all the time now. So
that's really
been fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. There's different distances for triathlons. I did sprints in Olympic distance, and it didn't really go further than that. But can you educate laughers who may not know much about triathlon, what the different distances are?
Yeah, so triathlon is comprised of typically three sports: a swim, a bike, and a run. They're always performed in that order. And the original triathlon kind of mindset and concept came from, people that were starting out. They thought it'd be really cool to see who could ride around the big island in Hawaii, who could do this swim, who could do this full marathon run. And so it started out as a full Ironman distance triathlon of a 2.4 mile swim, 112 miles on the bike, and then a full 26.2 mile marathon. And that is a very, very difficult distance to attain, even for your top elite athletes. Although now our top elite triathletes are, running 5-minute pace off the bike and averaging 27 on the bike. And
that's incredible.
They're finishing that entire race in under 8 hours for the males and under 9 for the females. So it's just crazy fast how fast people have gotten with that. But as the sport grew and evolved in the 80s, they had a lot of different distance races because they just wanted to bring it to the masses, and they wanted the sport to grow and develop. And so USA Triathlon has been instrumental in growing the sport and making those shorter distance races available to a lot of different people. And so now a sprint distance race is anywhere from a 400 to a 700 meter swim. There's some variability even with it. Sometimes they're done in a pool. Sometimes they're done in open water in a lake. Anywhere from like a 10 to 15 mile, 17 mile maybe bike ride. So a little bit of variability in that distance. and then typically a 5K run. And then you've got the Olympic distance, which is what they just competed in Tokyo for the Olympics, hence the Olympic distance. But it is a 1,500 meter swim, so just under a mile, a 40 kilometer bike, so which is 24.8 miles, and then a 10K run, which is 6.2. And then you have a half Ironman, kind of is getting into the long course, they call it. So the first two they call more short course, and then half Ironman is 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and a 13.1 or a half marathon run, and then the full iron distance. And so they're really considered long course and iron distance. Ironman itself is a brand, and so you got to be a little bit careful of brand naming things. So it's iron distance, half iron distance, Olympic, and sprint. And then they've even done some super sprints. The Olympics, I thought one of the coolest in watching the Olympic Games, one of the coolest events was they had this mixed relay where they had 2 females and 2 males per team, and each one did a super sprint that was about a 20-minute event. So it was like a 300 or 400 yard swim, maybe a 5 or 6 mile bike ride, and like a 2 mile run.
That's cool.
Flat out. And the U.S. actually won the silver medal in the event.
Nice.
Watching it was just a lot of fun. And so they're really looking at ways to make it a little bit more spectator friendly when you're talking about some of those elite pros. A lot of the pros, even at the Olympic distance, will do a draft legal on the bike. And they've started introducing some draft legal options for age groupers on the bike as well. So that adds a whole nother dimension to it and makes it a lot of fun. So there's a lot of different options and a lot of different formats out there. And I really think that sprint distance is something that, a lot of people with a little bit of training and a little bit of interest and whatnot can easily complete that. You don't have to have a top end bike. You can ride whatever bike you have. You can walk through the run if you want to. The biggest thing you got to be able to do is do the open water swim, because that's someplace. And even if you find a pool that, a race that has a pool swim, it's a lot less intimidating and scary. So, it's a good challenge for a lot of people just to set as a goal to complete something short like that. And it can really help them achieve some fitness goals.
I agree with that. You used too a term in there that I don't think everybody may know what it is. You said draft legal.
Oh yeah.
Can you educate us on what that means?
Yeah. So typically on a bike, if you watch the Tour de France, you'll see people riding in a big, huge pack of individuals.
Right.
And
yeah.
The people in the front are doing all the work, and you can actually save somewhere around 25 to 30% of your energy or your effort. Decrease your effort by about 25 or 30% by sitting behind somebody close enough that you benefit from the draft, just like you can draft in a car, right? If you're on the interstate, sometimes we'll try to save gas by getting behind a big semi and sit behind the semi for a while, right? You felt that, or the semi passes you and the wind blows and there's like a weird little suction draft. And so in triathlon, typically you are not allowed to draft, but in order to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more exciting, they've actually introduced some draft legal events where you're allowed to draft on the bike. They can't stop you from drafting in the swim. But that, so that's it. So yeah, and then it really comes down to a run sometimes. So your really strong runners can tend to excel at that type of a format.
Great. Yeah. And what distance do you do, by the way?
My primary distances have been sprint and Olympic distance. Most of the age group world championships I've done have been Olympic distance, but since I've had some injuries and had to decrease some of my running volume, and 2, they've introduced this draft legal sprint distance race for age groupers at the national and international level now. It's actually a lot of fun. So I've really enjoyed doing some more of those sprint races. I've done a couple of half Ironmans as well, pretty successfully. The goal for a lot of average or above average, I guess, triathletes is to break the 5-hour mark. And so I've done that 1.2 mile swim, 56 bike, and 13.1 run in 4:56.
Yay!
Which is a pretty darn fast. I think I was running a 7:40 pace after 56 miles on the bike.
Wow.
Average 20:21 on the bike for that. So yeah, wow. Pretty fast.
Yeah, way faster than I am.
Well, way fast. And that was 10, 15 years ago when I was a lot younger and a lot faster myself. So those times I don't see those times that much anymore.
No, still quite impressive to be able to say you accomplished them at all, I have to say. Oh, goodness. You also mentioned earlier when you were talking about your history and getting into, or your story getting into doing these world triathlons, the first bike you had, and now you have several more. How many bikes do you have? Where do you keep them? What's your favorite one?
So I have in the bike world and in the triathlon world, we say it's always N+1 with the bikes. There's nothing wrong with having one more. How many do you have? I have currently, I think, in my basement, 7 or 8 bikes.
Wow.
Some I just need to flat get rid of. Some I've gotten rid of 3 in the last couple of years, just sold them to people. There's been a big bike shortage during the pandemic and people looking for bikes. And so, I was able to get rid of a few. So I have a time trial bike, which I use, which has the funky bars on it and is the fastest bike. And that's if you're not going to draft, you can ride that. And I have a really high-end road bike. If I'm doing a draft legal race, you're not allowed to have the triathlon bars on your road bike. And so I have a road bike for draft legal events and a triathlon or time trial bike for most triathlons that I do. Then right before the pandemic started, the big hot trend in cycling right now is gravel bikes and gravel riding. So I had just bought a gravel bike right before the pandemic started, and that's in the Shenandoah Valley in Rockingham County. There is some amazing gravel to ride. And so you can ride these gravel roads and connect to paved roads and hop on another gravel road. And it really opens up a lot more places to go and things to do and different types of riding. And mine is even rated to do like 12-inch drops. So I can do some easy single track in the mountains, like mountain biking type stuff, which brings me to another bike I have is down there is a mountain bike, which now that I have the gravel bike, I probably will never ride the mountain bike again. I'm not very technically qualified to do things on trails, and I've had too many rounds of injuries from trail riding. I'm getting old enough and not really what I want to do that much anymore. Then I've got a bike that I use for commuting. Just an old hardtail mountain bike, but I don't want to ride a nice bike and leave it out where it might get stolen or damaged or beat up or rained on or whatever else. So that's down there. And then I've got an old kind of a road bike that has what's called a single speed. So it's just got one gear on the back. And I can ride that around town sometimes also just for fun. And those are the bikes that I ride. I've got, like I said, I've got some others down there that I just need to sell and get rid of. But those are the main ones that I will hop on right now.
That's really great. Yeah, you got quite the experience traveling all over the world with doing this. I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite places you've been in the world?
Well, my absolute favorite is to go to the Gold Coast of Australia. And I've been fortunate to race there twice. And I actually took students there on a study abroad in between those 2 races. It's just a really, probably the reason I say that is I had the race of my life in Australia in 2009 and missed the podium at an age group world championship by 22 seconds.
Wow.
And I was 6th. So it tells you 3, 4, 5, and 6 were all within, and I think there's a 7th within 30 seconds of each other.
That's a race.
It's a race. And at one point, I think I was in that 3rd position and I got passed near the end on the run and I had nothing left and I have no regrets. And I had done another event a couple of days earlier that was just a run, swim, run. And I was 4th in that event.
Wow. And
it was a short little like warm-up type of an event. And I was 4th in that event by 4 seconds. So 2 events, missed the podium total by 26 seconds in those 2 events. But just good memories. And that was really probably my favorite experience with Team USA. But I've also raced in Vancouver, which was absolutely beautiful. 2019, I raced in Lausanne, Switzerland, which was that one was pretty high up there as well. That was a really big bucket list type of a place to go visit and see, and had an amazing time there as well. Madeira Island in Portugal, my parents were able to come watch. That was
That's great.
early world championship events, and the Madeira wine is such a big thing. That was kind of a fun experience there. Really got to meet a lot of fun people from across the country and the globe at that event. And then Cancun was great because I got to meet a lot of para-triathletes or Paralympic athletes and athletes with disabilities. I'm super excited that for the first time, I feel NBC Sports is really broadcasting and advertising, like watch the Paralympic Games coming up and starting. I had an opportunity in 1996 as an athletic trainer to work at the Paralympic Games in Atlanta. And I think that really opened my eyes to opportunities for athletes with disabilities. And so I got, fast forward to 2002 when my friend and I went to Cancun. I think part of the reason we were friends was as soon as I saw her doing a triathlon locally and her showing up at a triathlon related event, I was like, hey, tell me your story. And I just was comfortable talking with, those athletes. And I always have been because of my experience in 96. So kind of merging the two lives, the work life and the personal triathlon life was kind of a fun thing. So I'm really excited about that. So back to places I've been. I think that those are probably the big places. Portland, Oregon is beautiful. I have to admit, Shreveport, Louisiana probably was not one of my favorite places to race.
We did a bowl game when my son played in college there.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
We still love you if you live or from Shreveport or know people in Shreveport.
Yeah, but we swam in the Red River, which was downstream from Shreveport.
Yeah.
It was not pretty. I got really sick after that event. Honestly, also I've raced a couple times in Chicago, and that location holds a special meaning to me because one of the races I did there, the professional photographer caught me giving my mom a high five as I came out of the water.
Oh, great.
And that's kind of was the world championships were back in Chicago a couple years after my mom passed away. And so it was really important for me to get a chance to qualify and get a little choked up talking about.
I love it. Yeah.
But qualify and be able to race in that event and feel like she was there with me and take her on another journey there.
Yeah. Yeah. With you in spirit.
Yep.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So a lot of times I'll write, shortly after she passed away, I would write mom on my hand just to remind me
that she was there.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's really great. I am really intrigued by you working with the Paralympic athletes and just alongside them as an athlete, as well as an athletic trainer. What do you think that stands out to you in terms of your experience working with those athletes that has inspired you?
So in 1996, most Olympic events and Paralympic events have a slogan. And in 1996, it was, "What's your excuse?"
Oh, I like that.
And so here you are working with people. And this was prior to the U.S. being engaged in Afghanistan and Iraq and a number of the wars where now we have so many more war veterans that are coming back with disabilities. Mm-hmm. And so I'm working with these individuals that are, visually impaired. They're have lost limbs. They were congenital deformities. There's different classifications, cerebral palsy, and a diverse group of individuals, and they were all very positive. And it was more about I may not have all my limbs, and I can't swim or run or do things the same as you, but I can still do things. And I have no excuse, and I'm not letting this be an excuse for me to not be a world-class athlete. There's a guy that I met who had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident, and I asked him how he lost his leg, and he said, "Oh, I didn't lose it. I know right where it is. It's in an itinerary in Illinois." And so kind of that oh. Okay, no, you didn't lose it. So why do you only have one leg? I guess is a better question. But just their attitude of, the positivity and saying this is the lot that I was dealt, and this is what I'm making the best of it. And that guy went on. I mean, he's a motivational speaker now.
Oh, wow. Do you remember his name? Do you?
I'm totally drawing a blank on it right
Okay,
now.
that's right. That's okay. If you remember, we'll
Um,
put it in the show notes, or if you remember
yeah,
during our interview. I was
yeah.
just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, and my friend, the friend that I met down in Georgia who had lost her arm to cancer when she was a young child, and tells a story of uh, getting expelled from elementary school for beating a kid up. She beat
Wow.
a boy up who was picking on her, and she had one arm. And her mom was like, "I don't care if you got expelled for that. You go, girl." So just things like that. You just hear these stories, and each one of them has such a fun and unique story. And that opportunity, I was teaching athletic training at Ball State, and one of my colleagues was named the director of medical services for the Paralympic Games in Atlanta. And he basically asked me, "What venue do you want to work at?" It wasn't, "Do you want to work?" It's like, "What venue do you want?" So I got to be in charge of the swimming venue, and really, a lot of the medical director services kind of for the swimming venue in Atlanta in '96. So really, just like I said, probably the most rewarding professional thing I've ever done, and really had an impact on me as a person as well, to kind of recognize that those people are brilliant and incredible
Incredible. Yeah.
and motivational.
Mm-hmm.
And I got nothing to complain about. I have no excuses.
That's right. We don't have any excuses. Bad things happen to all of us, and then we get to make a decision of what we choose to become
Right
after it. So, and they are definitely role modeling strength and fortitude and great attitudes. Yeah.
I remember a guy from the Netherlands, and the U.S. is way behind in recognizing our para athletes or our athletes with disabilities as equal to our Olympians. This is the first year medal winners in the Paralympics are going to win the same financial payout.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah.
But in 1996, I remember talking with this guy from the Netherlands, and he was like an international law student. 3 of his 4 limbs were congenitally deformed at birth, but he was like a rock star hero back in the Netherlands because he won like 5 gold medals in the swimming venue. And so he'd be getting interviewed, but I just was chatting with him and talked to him and got to know him. And, those types of stories are just, we hear about all the great stories with the Olympic athletes and what they've had to overcome to get to where they are, and some of the almost over dramatic things. But to me, each one of those athletes has that type of a story, as well as our Olympians do. And I know that obviously because you introduced, Annie earlier, and, everybody has obstacles and challenges to overcome, and making the most of your opportunities, I think is an important piece to happiness in life.
I agree with that. Making the most of your opportunities. We have an interesting area, by the way, making the most of your opportunities to train for world triathlons. So here locally, where do you train for swimming, for biking, for running?
So being a faculty member at JMU, I do take advantage of the facilities at University Recreation Center, which are absolutely amazing. The pool there, they've got a resistance channel even that's in a shallow area. So if I have an injury and I want to do some running against water for resistance and have a little less impact, I can do that. The weight room there, the treadmills there, depending on the time of the year. But the cycling in Shenandoah in the Harrisonburg area is amazing. So, I kind of live on the just off of campus on the west side of town. And so I tend to ride more towards the west, but I can go north and south very easily. Occasionally make it over towards the Massanutten area, but traffic over there and the roads are a little bit busier, and so it's a little less safe. Anywhere from Singer's Glen, Broadway to the north, down to North Augusta County and Stokesville to the south, and mostly to the west. And then in my basement, I have a pretty cool setup for riding on a stationary bike. So that's kind of a fun thing. And then running, it's just wherever, neighborhood. I also use during the pandemic, Westover Pool has been great because it's been open, and I like to get outdoors in the summertime to swim. And so I did take advantage of that as well quite a bit in the last year and a half. And it's a city facility. They've also got a nice little weight room over there that's available and open. So, try and take advantage of some of those things as well.
Yeah, that's a lot of swimming, biking, and running. How much time do you spend on each one?
You would think it sounds like a lot, but, on a given week, it's probably around 10 hours of training total. It doesn't include some of the stretching that I do, some of the foam rolling that I have to do to keep my body going, some of the rehab type stuff that I do. But, during the week when I'm busy, it's maybe an hour a day and then hour and a half a day. And then on weekends, trying to get out for a little bit longer type of stuff. And a lot depends on when events are. Fortunately, as a college professor, my summers are a lot more free and flexible. So I kind of bump up the training in the summertime. And then when things get busy with the school year, I kind of knock it down. It depends if I have races coming up or not and what those distances are. And so it definitely fluctuates and varies as I go through.
Yeah. Which one is your strong suit? The swimming, the biking, or the running?
Well, I grew up as a swimmer, so that's always been the easy.
Okay.
I have become a very strong cyclist, and that's become the favorite.
Okay.
And then there was a time where I actually really enjoyed running, and I was pretty decent for my age and my, abilities and whatnot. Have run some pretty fast 5 and 10Ks for females, given my age and whatever else at the time. But that's always been my biggest challenge. And so I tend to have few more injuries and tend to, if I'm going to lose a race, I'm going to lose it on the run. I'm typically not going to lose it on the swim or the bike.
Okay. Yeah, you have fun out there when you're on that cycling or when you're out there cycling in our farmlands. You've even said to me you spend time talking to those farm animals. What's the weirdest interaction or thing you found yourself saying to them?
Well, I will say the weirdest thing I've seen.
Okay, that's fine.
Even worse, or actually, I don't know about worse, more entertaining. So I was on a ride with a group one evening, and we saw 2 llamas having sex.
Yes.
Procreating.
All right.
And at first, I wasn't sure, 2 long necks sticking up, and they were up on top of a hill, and I was kind of in the front of this group of people, and kind of did a double take. I'm like, I couldn't say anything. So you asked me the craziest thing I've said. Is all I could do was point.
You were speechless.
Yeah, I was speechless. All I could do is kind of point, and and then everybody else behind me just started laughing, So
I would say that it's not something I see every day.
Not something we see every day. I mean, stopped and talked to cows. I've stopped and talked to pigs. A farmer caught me talking to some pigs one time because I was riding past, and pigs were on one side. He was on the other side of the road, and I looked at the pigs and started talking to them, and looked and saw him and laughing at me. And the really cool things too. I saw a cow being born one time.
Oh, wow.
And so just kind of stood there, just stopped and watched, that was pretty cool. Last night, I was just on my gravel bike riding through the trails in Hillendale, and I came across 4 deer, including 2 babies.
Oh,
so
that's great.
Yeah, you kind of stop and talk to them. You're like, don't be afraid of me. I just want to look at you because you're so cool, I've also had some close encounters with deer during races.
Running in front of your bike?
Yes.
Oh.
Close enough to smell the musk.
Woo!
That might have resulted from some words that wouldn't be appropriate for a PG show. So
I would have probably been spouting out a few words myself in those situations. But thankfully, you didn't have any accident with any of those, did you?
No, I have not. I have run over a chipmunk once, but the chipmunk survived. And probably my funniest animal story is a friend of mine had a squirrel run up his back and kind of perch on his shoulder for a second. And so everybody stopped because oh my gosh, what the hell? What's going on? What's going on? And the squirrel jumped off and ran up, and it was sitting on a power line right above them.
Yeah.
And squirrels, when they're mad, they're yelling and screaming down. This squirrel was up there just yelling and screaming at my friend. So lots of stories. I know somebody else who's run into a bear as the bear like they were mountain biking, the bear went through, and the first rider went through, scared the bear. The bear came down the trail, and the second person ran into the bear.
Oh my gosh.
Got knocked unconscious and stung by the bees because the bear was raiding a beehive.
That's a bad day.
Bad day, yeah. So all sorts of crazy stories with encounters with animals in nature, but the farm animals behave.
Yeah.
I talk to the horses a lot,
That's the way to make it fun. You know how to make your rides a lot of fun.
The goats, my favorite thing right now is, hello, goats. How are you? The goats are pretty good. They'll talk back quite a bit. So they're kind of fun to talk with.
Oh, that's really great. I think that's a lot of fun. Now, do you offer coaching services for triathletes? And if so, how many can you work with at one time, given your busy schedule?
Yeah, I do some coaching with some people, typically no more than like 2 or 3 at a time. Try to keep it pretty, like the right person for me to coach has to be fairly independent, in that I can, create the training program for them, kind of push it out to them, make sure they don't have any questions. I give a fair amount of detail on that training program. And then I'm available to answer questions, but then they have to recognize that that's not my full-time job. So, be a little bit patient. I'm pretty good about making sure that there's not a lapse in time and checking. And there's various ways to kind of track and monitor what they're doing with some of the software that's available. And if I had a little bit more time and was a little bit more proficient with some of that software, I probably could handle a few more clients, but I'm not quite at that point in my coaching. But I have had a coaching license for 8 years now, something like that. So
yeah, good. Yeah. I do like cycling. I get a little fearful out on the real road, but I got myself a Peloton this year, and I love the Peloton and the cycling classes.
I think the Peloton's been a savior for a lot of people over the pandemic.
Oh, I love it. I can't get enough of it. And you were telling me, though, that you use a Zwift. So what's the difference, and what do you and the other cyclists like most about the Zwift?
So Zwift, it's a Z-W-I-F-T.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. That's an easy mistake.
Yeah.
They're pronounced the same almost, right?
Right.
So Zwift is if you can put your own bike on the trainer. And so you're on your own bike instead of on a Peloton bike, which is going to be set up really different. You're sitting upright and you're standing up and pedaling. And on a regular road bike, typically most of the time you're just going to stay seated and ride. But with Zwift, what we can do is as you sign up for the it's like an app service, and you get your own little avatar, and there's like 5 different worlds. So I can hop on, like if today is a day, there's 3 different worlds available at any time. So like today, France is available. So I could hop on my bike in my basement, put myself virtually on the Champs-Élysées in France, and ride, the final loop of the Tour de France today if I want to.
That's cool.
And there will be other people out there riding at the same time, and we can, race each other. They actually have e-races that people can join. They have daily races, like hourly. I think there's something new event starting. You can join a group ride any time of the day that you want. Any distance, any duration, any intensity, however hard or easy you want. You can put your own pre-programmed workouts in. So if you're training at the elite level, there are days when you might want to do intervals of like 3 reps of 5 minutes at 200 watts on a bike. And so you can do that exact workout that should help to improve your individual fitness. And so you're going to build your workouts. Some days are going to be easy, some days are going to be hard. And it's just a fun way to be able to do that. And then join an event. I've rode, I think January, February, March, about every week they had it was like a stage race. And so you had to ride a certain event every week, and just kind of fun at the end to say that you accomplished something.
Yeah, that's right. You get on there, get some miles in.
I was able to get in during the 2020 year, I guess, March 2020 till, the early part of the pandemic, and all through last year at this time, I was able to get in about 4,500 miles on my bike. And part of it was because I was able to ride quite a bit on Zwift, especially when the weather wasn't nice. And then with a little bit more work from home, a little bit more flexible schedule, got out a little bit more during the fall than I would have if I were having to have a presence in the office.
Yes, I agree. I have my dog in here back in the background making noise, just so lappers, if you hear something,
Bruno!
that's Bruno.
Hi, Bruno.
Scratching in the
Speak, Bruno.
Bruno. Maybe we'll interview him one day. No, but seriously, seriously, I wanted to go to this next question, and just share, being a football mom with a son that's ended up in the NFL, we've been through a few injuries and thus have known a few athletic trainers over the years. I think the image, that's the image most people think about when they think of a trainer, the one that runs out on the field or court to provide care to the injured players. Is there more to the athletic training profession than that?
Yeah, there's a lot more. And so if we look at the scope of our practice as an athletic trainer, we're doing a lot to try to prevent injuries. So anything from nutrition counseling, making sure that athletes, pre-participation physicals, make sure that strength and conditioning sessions are safe and that type of a thing, making sure that techniques are being taught, making sure that facilities are safe, equipment is fit properly. So trying to prevent injuries as much as we can. The emergency care, so running out onto the field and handling whether it's I just got beat really bad and I need to lay here for a second and I really am not injured, which happens, to the potential life-threatening injuries and managing and making sure that we've got, for like heat illness is such a hot topic right now. I think we've had 4 or 5 deaths already in high school athletes this football preseason due to heat across the country. And so as an athletic trainer, if you're on site, you're prepared to manage that. You've got the cold bath already set up so that, and you maybe have a rectal thermometer to monitor core temperature. So it's the preparation for the activity and then hoping you don't have to use it, but then being prepared to handle the emergency, kind of transition to care to a hospital, making sure the body's cooled well enough before they do that. And then managing everything from colds and flus that athletes get this past year. A lot of COVID testing and contact tracing was added to our, roles and responsibilities, and then doing the rehabilitation on the backside and making sure not just that an athlete is, cleared to return, but are they really ready to return, and making sure that they've got enough training load and enough conditioning and enough fitness that they're really ready to go back and perform. And how do we modify practices? Can they maybe do some non-contact practice versus contact practice? And then, the concussion piece is another really big topic for us as athletic trainers is, monitoring that athlete as they're returning back to play. There's typically a 5 to 7 step process. And so it's a really diverse profession. It's really grown. We've got a lot of making sure that, simple things like if an athlete has a cold and they're put on cold meds, those cold meds are going to potentially cause them to become dehydrated more quickly. And so we have to watch those athletes a little bit more closely to make sure that they don't have any, complications as a result of whatever medications they're on. And it's actually a very diverse kind of a first responder, physician assistant, physical therapist, parent, counselor, nutritionist,
personal trainer.
A little bit of personal training going in there, to the strength and conditioning piece of it, across it's a very broad spectrum of things. And so we're very different. To be an athletic trainer now, you have to complete a 4-year bachelor's degree in a related field and then get a 2-year master's degree. So it is a graduate level of entry into the profession.
Yeah, it has. I have a background in exercise physiology, believe it or not, Bachelor of Science, a master's degree. That was 20 years ago. And that it has definitely evolved over time, because my classmates that were doing athletic training then just need an undergraduate degree. It definitely has evolved to that for sure. You mentioned concussions and you do concussion research. What are some general misunderstandings about athletic concussions?
So I would say the number one thing is, as good as the Will Smith movie on concussions was for bringing recognition and understanding to it, it also caused a lot of misunderstanding in my viewpoint and opinion. And so basically that movie, most people that saw that were like, I never want my son or daughter to participate in any sort of contact or collision sports. If they do, they're going to have long-term complications. They're going to have long-term brain trauma. And the numbers just don't really support that. While Dr. Bennett Amalu's research showed that, 104 out of the 110 brains or whatever that he looked at had some sort of CTE or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, those brains really only represent about 10% of the people that played in the NFL at that time, or less than that, like 1% or something. And so, you've got a son that played in the NFL, that played football, that had a concussion, and I guarantee his brain, I've talked with Landon, he's one of the brightest, sharpest young men that I know.
He's pretty sharp. Yeah.
His brain is functioning just fine. And I would not worry, about having long-term, it almost made it sound like from that movie that if you play football, you will have CTE, and you're going to be a early onset dementia at age 30, and you're going to be a drooling, bumbling idiot by the time you're 45. And that just is not true. We have so many athletes that have played football, and we have to look at a lot of those brains were playing football at a time when we didn't manage concussions like we do now. We didn't know what we were doing prior to 2005. Really, we really were pretty clueless and did some really stupid things, and our practices have changed so much. We can't prevent all head injuries, and head injuries don't just happen in sports. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people are afraid about concussions in sports. Well, there's actually a really interesting study out of Fairfax County Public Schools that of all the kids in the school system that had a concussion, only about 20% of them occurred from organized sports. Others occurred from car accidents, fights, skateboard accidents, playground accidents, things that happen just in life. And so we can't walk around with a, bubble wrap around our head and protect it all the time. And that even isn't going to help because your brain actually is suspended inside your skull. And so anytime your head gets shaken, you can shake your head really hard and end up with a mild concussion in some cases. And so, I think there's this misunderstanding that we can prevent them. We can't. And there's a misunderstanding that if you have one, you're going to have long-term brain damage, because that's like 5% of people that have some sort of a long-term complication. Our athletes are managed much more closely, much more safely than they were. And they happen in everyday life. So.
Yeah, really. Thanks for sharing that. I wasn't aware of the research and some of those statistics. That really puts it in perspective. Yeah. Landon's 6'4". That's my son's name, 335 pounds. So his size helped me worry about him less. It's a big offensive lineman. Not that I didn't worry at all because I'm a mama bear, but that did help. But I appreciate you sharing that. You do a lot of other research too with injury rehabilitation and using wearable devices. Can you share with us what you've been doing with that and what you're finding out?
Well, I'm using the wearable devices is something that's fairly new, and we think right now. I think it's somewhere around 70% of all adults have some sort of an Apple Watch or a Garmin watch or a Fitbit or something. Even your phone, you can track your steps, right? And so we can pull out our phone and track our steps, and we can track our heart rate, and we can track all these different things with all these wearable devices. And so, as a triathlete, that's something we've been doing for a long time. And in the last 15 to 20 years, as these wearable devices have emerged, it just makes tracking all that data and utilizing that data to kind of figure out what we're doing, where we're going. We can be smarter with it. So going back to like watching the Olympics, I was watching one of the men's volleyball matches, and they were talking about the team from Argentina wearing you could see it underneath their jerseys, like these little vest type of things. It was a men's team. It looked like they had a sports bra on, but inside was a little device that tracked how high they were jumping with each jump and tracking how many jumps and what the impact forces were, the G forces to the body with that. And so we're starting to get all this new wearable information, both in individual endurance type sports as well as in team sports, that we can now start to use that to figure out, like, at what point. We know people tend to get injured more when they're tired and fatigued. So when do they reach that tired and fatigued point? and then how well do they recover? So now we have like the Aura rings and the Whoop bracelets and all these different devices that even your Apple Watch tells you how well you slept overnight. And so that's an indication as to recovery. And if you had a good night's sleep, then you're more reared and ready to go for the next training session. If you didn't, maybe we need to back you off a little bit for a day or two to let you recover so that we can push you hard again and really leverage a lot of that information. And so you take that into a rehabilitation setting and say, we can't just push. We've got to push and then let people recover and push and recover and push and recover. And that's the basic foundations of the overload principle that you learned.
Yes,
I did. An exercise physiology degree, that overload principle. We've got to stress and overload and then recover, stress and overload and recover. And so now we have more data to support that and more information to support that. And so it's just trying to figure out where those loads are and how we can leverage that and look at some of those things.
Yeah, that's really cool. I might have to dust off those old books.
I keep telling I try to get my students interested in it. And they, 5 years ago, they had looked at, if I first started getting onto this when I took students to study abroad in Australia, and they were doing it with their professional rugby team. And that was like 2012. And I asked my students, so what do you guys think? And they're like, oh, never happened in the US, never going to happen in the US, never going to happen with US football, especially, no way. And then fast forward about 2018, I think it was, I got back from taking students to study abroad in Ireland, and I had a phone call for a reference check for a student who was going to do an internship with the New York Giants. And talking with their athletic trainer, he was like, hey, what did you learn over there? What system are they using? Blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And like they were starting to implement it. And so since 2018, now we've seen it emerge even with the, American football. And so, 5 years ago, I talked to students about this, data tracking and all this other stuff. And they looked at me like I had 5 heads because they weren't seeing it.
Yeah.
Like, guys, this is really cool. And I'm like, this is like the future. Like, if you understand this stuff, go for it. Like, you can write your ticket in the future. And
I think we're seeing a trend there for what the future is like in terms of fitness and athletics with these wearable devices. That's pretty exciting. Do you use the wearable devices for your own training?
I do. I use a Garmin and the Garmin stuff. And then there's a couple of software programs I use that do all the calculations for me and tell me like how tired and fatigued I am and where I am, how to peak and how my training load is increasing. I can monitor, like 10% increase per week, they say is safe. And so I've always kind of guessed at what is 10%. And now I can actually measure it.
On a practical level, how do you take some personal data of yours that you look at and then set training goals for yourself? Can you give an example of what that might look like?
So, when I kind of look at like starting a training season in say January, kind of if I'm going to be racing mostly through the summer, I kind of try to put my like A race. Okay. And I can count back from that A race and know, 2 weeks out, I got to start a taper. So how do I build up to that point? What are my current strengths and weaknesses? What do I need to do to get there? And then, where am I now? And you got to test and kind of build for a couple of weeks and then do a reassessment to see if it's working. And so it can become like a year-long cycle. Typically, there's different things within there. You build up and then you recover at the end of the year. You take some just fun time in, October, November. December is always weird because of the holidays and travel and that type of thing. So really starting in January, trying to plan out your year a little bit more. And where are you? What have your limiters been in the past? What do you need to focus on this year versus other years? And then just, part of it is looking at schedule and timing and what other events, for a long time, I might do races starting in April or May with the goal of a big race in September, but those races in April and May, I may pick one race like in June to kind of peak for, to kind of get a really good hard test, but the other races might just be hard training days.
That's cool. Yeah. So, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that. You're not the only athlete in your family, though.
No.
No, we got
not the best athlete in my family.
But you got one. This niece, She's just won the gold in the Olympics this year in Tokyo. What has that experience been like for you and your family?
It's been a lot of fun watching her grow and develop from high school when she really started playing through college, and then with the national team and professionally. And she might kill me for saying this, but when she first got invited to go out to the training center in Anaheim, my sister tells the story of driving her to the airport, and she was just in tears of like, Mom, I don't fit in. I don't belong. Why am I doing this? This is stupid, blah, blah, blah. And my sister like, just go, Karch Karai, the coach, said, just come out for a week or two. We'll see how you fit in. We'll know in a week or two. It's just a couple weeks. You don't have anything else to do. You don't have a job, so you may as well go do this, for 2 weeks, see what happens. Everything's covered, all expenses paid. And my sister, other than a text of I arrived safely, didn't hear from her for 4 days. And when she did, it was like, Mom, this is the best thing ever. It's like camp for adults. All we do is we play volleyball, we hang out, we eat, we play volleyball, we hang out, we eat, blah, blah, blah. And so she had some early opportunities to show what she could do. And I'm really proud of the continued growth mindset she's had. And the whole team is just an amazing group of women. And it's just been fun to watch them grow and bond together over the years. I've learned a lot about volleyball, and I've been lucky. I don't get to see her play in person all that much, but I'm often up when she's playing with the national team from May to September, I'm often up at all hours of the night watching her matches that she might be playing all over the globe. And then, it's a difficult, I was talking about athletes with tough schedules though, she plays with the national team now from really April through September. And then she'll go in October to her professional team and be there until March of the next year. So it's really 2 full seasons, and there really is no off season. And so it's a lot of work. She's compromised, and she's a Christmas baby, Christmas Day baby, and she's spent Christmas in Turkey and in Japan, where they don't celebrate Christmas. Religiously very different in those countries, and so that's tough. And she's very strong in her faith, and so for her as a Christian in those countries to not be able to celebrate that has been, that's difficult. So a lot of compromise, a lot that she's having to give up, a lot of, she herself has a young niece and a young nephew that she'd really love to be closer with. And her niece was really excited to see Aunt Annie's picture on the front of the newspaper.
I bet.
Gold medal. And they were in the grocery store, and Avery was like, there's Aunt Annie on the newspaper. So, she doesn't get to have those close of relationships with those kids as she would like to, just because she's traveling so much.
Yeah, this had to be really interesting this year for your family. I mean, that's just a challenge in general with her schedule and what her life is like. But I understand the family couldn't be over in Tokyo this year. So how did you all as a family, have this experience to provide fan support? Were there Zoom calls? Were there group texts? What happened when the team won gold? Did everybody just go blow up the text, or what happened there?
Yeah. So, it was more group text.
Okay.
It was hard not being there. Part of the reason I haven't raced much this year, well, last year was a pandemic, so I couldn't, but my plan was not to race much last year, and then it extended into this year, is because I knew that there would be 2 weeks that I was hoping to be able to go to Tokyo and watch her and support her and be there. But so not being able to do that, and my family is in Indiana, and her parents, my sister and her husband and her brother, and the rest of the family's in Indiana, and I'm in Virginia, and then her fiance's out in California. So it was a lot of group text.
Okay.
And then for the gold medal match, her fiance Tanner flew to Indiana, and then they did one of those family watch parties. So if you're watching the Olympics, they were actually on during the gold medal match. The Drews family was on as one of the watch parties that was going on. So
that's cool.
So I got to see them on TV, and then Yeah, from the opening ceremonies, it was a text of, well, I can't imagine how Annie feels in the family group text. And Annie chimes in, I feel sweaty. So
Okay.
that she
It's
definitely
what's real. Yeah.
it's what's real. And,
Yeah.
she keeps things pretty real as well. She's really well grounded as a person. And so volleyball is what she does. It's not who she is.
Yes.
And so I think that's something that runs through our family as well. And so, just a lot of fun group texts when she won. I mean, I was watching with some friends. I have video of me screaming.
I didn't see that. I'm going to have to see that.
No, I didn't share that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's some screaming. There's lots of tears. I think I lost my voice when they won the semifinal, and it was guaranteed they were going to get a gold or silver. That night was crazy. Just lots of, some phone calls. My dad's not technologically savvy. And so just making sure he was able to watch when he wanted to watch or where he could. And so he could, see things, and phone calls with him a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun run during the 2 weeks, but also, her finding out she made the Olympic team, getting named, that was a really big day. We had I think we had a really optimistic belief that she would make it, but you never know until you're told, and so
the confirmation is always going to have.
Yeah. And so it's been fun. 5 years ago, the U.S. Olympic team got silver, and or maybe they got bronze 5 years ago, but they struggled in the position where she came in. And really, when she got with the national team 5 years ago, and they had told her, that's a weak spot, it's an opportunity for you, she made it a mission to make sure that it was going to be a strength. And both, I think I actually rewatched the medal match last night, the gold medal match. And one of the things I heard this time that I didn't hear the first couple times I watched it was them saying that while that had been a weakness in the past, that was the strength of the team this year, was that right side hitter position that she played in. And so both she and Jordan Thompson are best of friends. She's got a lot of other friends. And while they talked about in the Olympics 12 strong, there's really 23 of them that are in the gym with the national team. And so it's really fun that to see that success, and to see that those that weren't part of the 12 that got to represent also feel like they were a part of that medal.
Yeah, that's really cool. I read that Annie, led the U.S. in 14 kills for this match. I don't even know what a kill is. So can you? I was like, that sounds impressive, but
right, a kill.
I don't know. What is that? Is it?
A kill is when you attack at the net, you hit a spike, and it goes straight down to the ground, and the other team cannot return it back into play.
I do know what that looks like. So I just didn't know what it was called. Okay.
So that's a kill. That's considered a kill.
All right. Yeah.
She was, really high hitting percentage, like 354. So it's like a batting average. So think about a batter batting at 354. That's a pretty high batting average. And so you want the hitting percentage to be similar.
Yeah, she's a little superstar, but even a more wonderful person, it sounds like. So you have a lot to be proud of.
Very proud.
Yes, we know you rooted for her in the Olympics, of course. But you went to Indiana University and your niece went to Purdue. So did you have a tougher time rooting for her when she played for them?
I did.
Okay.
For 4 years, I learned how to say boiler up.
Okay.
And that has been mostly stricken from my vocabulary now.
So you're more at peace and happy now.
No, I mean, I still, she got a great education at Purdue. Her coach at Purdue had actually coached volleyball at a high school where my brother-in-law had coached basketball in Muncie. And so they were friends. And so, and then my sister and the coach's wife were sorority sisters in college. And so there's a family connection there. And I think it's partly why she felt very comfortable going there. And really trusted them, and very much a family environment. So she had a great experience there, and it's a good school. I can respect that. I am very biased into the Big Ten. I think it's a great conference for a lot of different things and a lot of good schools. And
Yeah.
I will cheer for Purdue volleyball most of the time now. I can't think of any. I probably would still cheer for IU to beat Purdue. It would be a huge upset if they did.
Naturally. Right.
But
yeah.
I'm going to cheer for IU against Purdue and then first and then in any other sport and go from there.
I like it. As we wrap up here, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you? What's the best way? Or
Best way is to do that via email. And my email is Connie, CONNIEP, TRI, at Gmail.
Okay.
And so that's probably the best way to get in touch with me.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, Laughers, we'll put that information in the show notes as well. Well, thank you, Connie. This has been so super fun and just enjoyable. I am so blessed every time I get to spend time with you, and today was no different. The Valley is, yes, you are welcome. The Valley is lucky to have you. So again, thanks for sharing your story today, educating us and inspiring us.
Thanks, Dawn. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And lastly, and most importantly, thanks for tuning in, Laughers. Out of all the podcasts out there, you picked us, and we think that's pretty darn special, just like you. Until next time, keep smiling. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Virginia is for Laughers podcast, brought to you by X2 Comedy. We'll be dropping a new podcast every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so check back for another uplifting episode. Come to an X2 Comedy show or let us bring a show to you. To find out more, head to x2comedy.com. Be sure to share us with a friend. Until next time, cheers.